The Hoop Heads Podcast is brought to you by Head Start Basketball.
Hey Hoopheads! Wanted to take a minute to shout out our partners and friends at Dr. Dish Basketball. Their Dr. Dish shooting machines are undoubtedly the most advanced and user-friendly machines on the market, and they truly accelerate skill development faster than ever. Learn more at drdishbasketball.com and follow their incredible content at Dr. Dish B-Ball on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. Mention the Hoopheads podcast and save an extra $300 on the Dr. Dish Rebel, All-Star, and CT models. Also, make sure to check out the new Dr. Dish Home Machine, which is perfect for these crazy times when gyms and schools are closed. Visit drdishbasketball.com for details. That's a great deal, Hoopheads. Get your Dr. Dish shooting machine today.
Hi, this is Don Showalter from USA Basketball, and you are listening to the Hoop Heads Podcast.
Prepare like the pros with the all-new Fast Draw and Fast Scout. Fast Draw has been the #1 play diagramming software for coaches for years, and now with its integrated web platform, coaches have the ability to add video to plays and share them directly to their players' Android and iPhones via their mobile app. You'll quickly see why Fast Model Sports has the most compelling and intuitive basketball software out there. In addition to a great product, they also provide basketball coaching content and resources through their blog and play bank. For access to these plays and more information, visit fastmodelsports.com or follow them on Twitter at FastModel. This episode is brought to you by the Ready State Virtual Mobility Coach. Dr. Starrett is a movement and mobility coach for players in the NFL, MLB, NHL, and NBA, plus a doctor of physical therapy. Kelly has created a program called Virtual Mobility Coach. Every day, Virtual Mobility Coach gives you guided mobility videos. It walks you step by step through Kelly's proven techniques to relieve pain, improve range of motion, and improve performance. Try it completely free for 2 weeks, and if you decide to continue, you can get 10% off for life using promo code HoopHeads10. Visit thereadystate.com/hoopheads and use code HoopHeads10 at checkout. Again, that's thereadystate.com/hoopheads and use code HoopHeads10 when you sign up to get 10% off for the life of your membership after your 14-day free trial ends.
We want to set a culture and expectation for our kids. We talk about discipline, unity, toughness, and passion as our 4 pillars in our program. And we want all those kids to understand what those mean and why we have those as our foundation.
Kevin Sapara is in his first season as the head boys basketball coach at Strongsville High School in the state of Ohio. Prior to his arrival in Strongsville, Sapara led Avon High School's boys basketball program for 8 seasons. His resume includes 2 Lorain County Coach of the Year awards and 2 Conference Coach of the Year honors, as he guided the Eagles during their transition from the West Shore Conference to the Southwest Conference. Before Avon, he coached at Claymont High School in Uhrichsville, Ohio, as the head coach for 3 seasons. Sapara also served as graduate assistant and video coordinator at Cleveland State University. Sapara attended Muskingum College, playing basketball and baseball for the Muskies. We recently launched the Hoopheads Coaching Mentorship Program. We believe that having a mentor is the best way to maximize your potential and become a transformational coach. By matching you up with one of our experienced mentors, you'll develop a one-on-one relationship that will help your coaching, your team, your program, and your mindset. The Hoopheads Mentorship Program delivers mentoring services to basketball coaches at all levels through our team of experienced head coaches. Find out more at hoopheadspod.com or shoot me an email directly, mike@hoopheadspod.com. Our roster of shows is growing, so don't forget to check out all our other podcasts on the Hoopheads Pod Network, including Thrive with Trevor Huffman, Beyond the Ball, the CoachMaze.com podcast, Players Court, Bleachers and Boards, The Green Light, and our team-focused NBA podcasts, Cavalier Central, Grizz and Grind, Nuck If You Buck, The 305 Culture, Blazing the Path, Hashtag Lakers, Motor City Hoops, X's and O's NBA Breakdown, Spanning the Spurs, LA Hoops, Thunderous Applause, and the Wizards Hoops Analyst. We're looking for more NBA podcasters interested in hosting their own show centered on a particular team. Email us info@hoopheadspod.com if you're interested in learning more and bringing your talent to our network. Get ready to take some notes as you listen to this episode with Kevin Sapara, head boys basketball coach at Strongsville High School in the state of Ohio. Hello and welcome to the Hoopheads Podcast. It's Mike Klimsing here without my co-host Jason Sunkel tonight, but I am pleased to be joined by the head coach of the Strongsville High School Mustangs, Kevin Sapara. Kevin, welcome to the Hoopheads Pod.
Thanks for having me, Mike. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Excited to have you on. Full disclaimer, Kevin is the high school coach at the community where I live and where my son goes to school. So as we go through and we're talking, you'll see that we have a lot of things in common, a lot of familiarity with sort of our similar backgrounds. So just to get that on the record off the top, Kevin, wanted to start by going back in time to when you were a kid. Tell everybody a little bit about how you fell in love with the game of basketball when you were younger.
Man, it's crazy. I can remember back being in kindergarten, and I grew up in Strongsville. I went to kindergarten, Chapman Elementary, all the way through high school, and I can remember playing basketball in the classroom in kindergarten. Moving on, my dad loved basketball, and I always got a chance to follow him around. He always coached. He coached middle school when I was younger, and he became a head coach when I was in fourth grade at Cuyahoga Heights. And I thought that was the coolest thing. And going to practice. I remember Christmas breaks, getting up in the morning, going out to practices and shoot arounds for games, and just thinking it was awesome. Just couldn't believe that I was part of it, and got to be around the guys and see what at that time were superstars for a fourth grade kid was
Absolutely.
really like, and just really loved that experience, and being around my dad and sharing that with him really got me thinking about playing basketball and having basketball as a part of my life. So I can remember it for as long as I can remember, basketball was something I was interested in and always enjoyed being a part of, and my dad played a big role in that.
When you think back to that time, did you realize in the moment how, I guess, lucky you were that you had access to the gym, or was just kind of, this is my experience, my dad's a coach, so I get to go and shoot around, and as you said, kind of look up to your heroes, or was that something that you just were like, hey, this is just the way it is?
You know what? I don't think I took it for granted. I brought friends along, and I saw that they realized how cool it was, and even to go along with that, being a ball boy. I was a ball boy back in the day at Cuyahoga Heights for football games. When my dad would do the scoreboard, he's the head coach, and he did other things for the school, and just being in that atmosphere as well. Getting into high school sports in it as itself was awesome, and it was just, I wanted to share that with other people. I knew that not everyone had access to the gym, or everyone was in the gym as much as I was. I was able to realize that at an early age, which was good.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you remember, looking back now at your dad as a coach, now yourself being a coach, what do you remember about your dad's coaching style, or just something that sort of stands out to you when you think back about your time watching him on the sidelines?
Man, I'll be honest with you. It was the coaching style I don't really remember. I remember the players more than the style. I remember hearing the word motion a lot from my dad, and ball fakes from my dad, but not really looking too much into the patterns they were running, as opposed to the players that I like to watch, or their motions and how they were setting screens, or how they were ball faking and using screens or making passes. I was more interested in the players. And I was also interested in my dad, no doubt, just his antics and how into it he was, and just how passionate he was about the game. And it kind of, it bothered me when they lost, and when they won, I was ecstatic. And it was just a really special time, and just to be around all those kids. We're talking early 90s, where that's where you were. When did you graduate down?
So I graduated in 88, and I was an assistant at Richmond Heights from whatever, 95 up through about 2009. So we probably
was that with Coach Schmook?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
There you go. Yeah.
So I'm
and
sure.
That was
I know I
MAC
crossed paths. Yeah, crossed paths with your dad obviously a lot, but I'm sure you and I crossed paths.
Sure, for sure.
On the floor as you were shagging balls. No question about that. Who was your favorite player that you looked up to at Cuyahoga Heights during the time when you were growing up?
All right, so it was no doubt it was Curtis Gardner. I believe he was a 97 graduate.
Sounds about right, yep.
And they went to the regional finals, lost to Zanesville Rosecrans, but they had an unbelievable season. They won the district, which was held at Strongsville, and beat, which was, at the time, I think it was Lorain Catholic, which is not around anymore. And I remember... they were the 1 seed and Cuyahoga Heights was the 2 seed, but I remember Curtis he was just the man. He was the best player my dad ever coached. You know, he was a head coach for 5 years, and you know, from what I remember, it wasn't really close. They had some good players, but he was the guy.
Yep. Yeah, he was a really good player. And during that era at Richmond, you know, we had some pretty high level players. My first year we got there, we had a kid named Steve Robinson who was a senior, and then we had a really nice sophomore group that year. We had James Dickerson, and so you know, Dickerson ended up going and he played at Edinburgh, a real good player, lefty. You know, and then later we had Eddie Days who ended up walking on. He was on the Ohio State. The Mike Conley, Greg Oden team as a walk-on, and so we had some really fun times. And Cuyahoga Heights was always one of those games that it was always a tough environment because the crowd was always into it there, and just it felt like a big rivalry game. We missed the MAC 8 when it broke up because we always felt like that was a really solid basketball league back in the day.
Yeah,
I'm sure your dad
Beechwood had really good teams back then too.
Yep.
And then Independence with Coach
Lutheran
Mabella.
Lutheran West was always good.
He was always good. And then you got to love that Coach Schmook's still getting after it out in
I know, it's crazy, man. He's been around. I tell people all the time, I feel fortunate to have been with him for the number of years I had, and I tell people consistently that I never saw anybody get as much out of the kids as he was able to. And I felt like in the whole time we were there, we probably lost maybe only once or twice to a team that I felt like we weren't, you know, that we weren't better, that we were better than. And so, you know, he just always had his teams prepared. And he's, if there's ever a guy who you would describe as a coaching lifer, Phil is definitely without question that guy. So as you're growing up and you're around the gym, you're around your dad and you're around coaches, and you're just starting to get that feel for, hey, basketball is going to be the game that I love. And I know you played some other sports. I know you're a baseball player as well. So talk a little bit about your multi-sport experience and how you think that played into your development as an athlete, whether you look at it from a basketball perspective or baseball, or just enjoying your childhood, being able to be a multi-sport athlete.
Yeah, I mean, I was actually a big baseball kid. Summer baseball, AAU baseball, and you know, I played basketball, but you know, it was you know, not something that I was completely into. I always liked playing it, but I was baseball. That was my thing, and my dad was also a baseball guy as well. But you know, I always played basketball. That was something I really enjoyed, and until I got to high school when. It somewhat flipped a little bit. I really enjoyed baseball, but basketball, the fans, the practices were so intense. You know, just everything. Being inside with your teammates and getting after it was something that really attracted me to the game. And in middle school, I got a chance to play for Albion at the time. And I had Coach Smith, and he was very passionate about the game. And that's when I think I really started, you know, really getting interested in it and trying to be better than just good, and trying to, I think that's when I really understood that, you know, not everybody's going to play in high school.
Right.
You know,
it doesn't happen by accident, right?
Yep. We have 2 middle schools that we're playing against center. We're the same age. We're going to be in the same grade. You know, I started figuring things out, and, you know, that's when it started, and had a great high school experience too with basketball. And I think that alone was what got me, you know, wanting to do that as part of my life.
For sure. So what did it look like when you started to say, hey, I want to put some more time in with basketball? What did your let's say, off season look like between the years when you're in, going 8th to 9th grade, 9th to 10th grade? What does that look like in the summertime as far as you trying to improve yourself and get better?
Now back then, things were a lot different than they are now.
Absolutely.
Like I said, I was wanted to play baseball, so I put a lot of time into baseball too, but in the summer and in the off season. But for basketball, it's getting shots up. It's going to the gym with my dad and using chairs and going through chairs and working out as much as I could. I don't, obviously, looking back, I could have done a lot more, and it's hard when you're young. It's hard even now to get kids to understand the big picture and what it really takes to be great. If you really want to be an elite player and be very skilled, basketball is a tough sport. You really got to put the time in. But I did what I could. I got shots up. I enjoyed myself. I played at the park with friends. We'd have some great pickup games at High Point, and I loved it. I would be at the park for hours upon hours.
Yeah, it's one of the things that's kind of been a theme, Kevin, through our show, is just me always lamenting the fact that pickup basketball, especially outdoor pickup basketball, has kind of disappeared, and it just doesn't exist in the same way. And I always say that I feel bad for kids today because I just know what a good experience that I had just playing at the park and traveling around all over the city trying to find games, and just felt like that really helped me to develop not only as a player, but also as a person, because you're playing with kids of all different ages. And now we know that kids primarily play with kids their own age, and they're in a gym, and mom and dads are in the stands, and there's a ref, and there's coaches. And I think sometimes you lose some of that creativity that you might have gotten from just being able to play with your friends without anybody watching, because you can try stuff. And it's interesting how different a kid's experience is today in the year 2021 compared to what it was like for you and I back in the day as a couple of old guys.
Yeah, there's no doubt. I mean, things have changed so much. You look at skill development, AAU, all of that stuff was not as apparent as it is now.
Yeah, for sure. So when you think back to your high school career, what's one or two moments as a high school player that stand out for you, that when you think back to your time as a Strongsville Mustang, that you think, man, those are the moments that are going to stick with me for the rest of my life?
Oh, well, I remember being with my teammates. I remember, being out late with my teammates. As far as like the senior pickups with the cheerleaders, where you're just celebrating with your with your family, with your team. And I remember on the floor against St. Ignatius, we lost by it was 1 or 2. We had a shot at the buzzer to win it, and we missed. I remember getting crossed over by Pete Cook that game and fell down, got back up, but he still hit the jump shot. So I mean, little things like that. But one moment that I think kind of really pushed me into wanting to do basketball as part of my life was our last game of my senior year. We lost to Medina, and we had split with them in the regular season. They had a really good team. They had Tony Stockman, who was Mr. Basketball in the state, who went to Clemson and then transferred to Ohio State. Phenomenal player. Travis Schwab, he's currently the head coach at Muskingum. They had some guys, and we lost the game 46-43, lost by 3. And I remember going in the locker room, and I was devastated, because at that point in time, I'm very upset. I'm crying. That's it for me. That my career's over. But the bigger thing was basketball was over. I thought, well, I'm not going to play in college, and I don't know how is basketball going to be part of my life. I didn't see how that was going to. I didn't know, what was my vessel. How was I going to get basketball to still be part of my life? And that was tough for a high school kid to kind of think that way and not really see how he's going to keep something that he loved, with him.
Yeah, I think there's no doubt. And that's one of the things that as adults, I think sometimes we take that for granted, like when a season ends and we're coming back as a coach, we're coming back for the next season. And so we're kind of already, you're planning, you're thinking about, well, what are we going to do next year? And we're losing guy X, Y, and Z, but we got player X, Y, and Z coming up behind them. And you forget that for those kids, those seniors, that there's a finality to it. And for most kids, that is it. I mean, that's the last quote, real organized basketball game that they'll ever play. And not many kids get an opportunity to go on and play at the college level and to continue their career. So for most of them, it is the high school season ends when you're a senior, and that's it. And I think that that's something that as coaches, it's really important to kind of take that into consideration when you start thinking about how you react at the end of the season and just kind of how you go through and create an experience for your kids that are part of your program. So as you get done, are you thinking about, you kind of didn't have college basketball on your mind, but you end up going to Muskingum. Talk to me a little bit about your college decision, why you decided to go there, and then what your athletic experience was like at Muskingum.
Yeah, I went to Muskingum. I was going to play baseball there and ended up playing 2 years of baseball. Great experience there. But still wasn't, wasn't what I wasn't loving it. It was to be at a Division III school where you're paying your own way, and you want to play a sport, you got to love it. You think about those kids that are playing Division III basketball. That doesn't mean that they can't play. So that you got to get that. You got to get that idea out of anyone's head. But yeah, those guys want to play more than anybody, and
Absolutely.
They can play more than anybody. They play harder usually than anybody because they love the game, and that's why they're there. So I remember, it's a smaller school, meeting some different kids. Matt Dansby he was a leader. He was a captain for the Muskies back then. And he's actually currently a principal at down in Pickerington. Cliff Sprang, phenomenal player. Zach Ross. We had some really good players. And I remember just hanging out with them and playing some pickup ball again. Like we were saying, we would play down at the park. And I'm like, hey, man, I can actually play with these guys, And one thing led to another, and I was the 13th guy on a 12-man roster, and it was the best experience I had. It was awesome.
So what'd you like about it? I mean, what was it about? Because clearly one of the things that everybody likes to do is get out on the floor and actually get to play. So if you're the 13th guy on a 12-man roster, there's not a lot of playing time to be had. So what was it about being part of the program that you enjoyed, that you liked about being a part of it?
Well, I'm going to start off. I actually was on the JV team the first year, so I still got some time, and to me it didn't really matter. So I mean, if you're playing JV basketball and liking that, then you're practicing and you're enjoying yourself, So I loved practicing. I mean, I wanted to work hard. I wanted to show that I could play, and I felt like I did that. So I don't regret any of it. It was a lot of fun, and it was a lot of hard work and just loving the game. You have to do that. Like I was saying, I mean, those kids that play Division III basketball, those guys can play, and they love the game. And if you're a 13th man on a 12-man roster at a Division III basketball school, then you really love the game.
Absolutely. Hey, hoopheads, we all hate ankle sprains, and they happen way too often. Ankle injuries are the #1 sports-related injury. Arise is trying to change that. With the iFast, your athletes get preventative protection and full mobility. Athletes no longer need to wear bulky braces that limit performance and give mediocre protection. Anyone playing sports should be using these products. Keep your athletes in the game. Don't wait for them to get hurt to take action. Visit www.arise.com, spelled ARYSE, and use the code HOOPHEADS to get 20% off the future of performance. That's ARYSE.com with promo code HOOPHEADS to get 20% off. All right, so let's take a quick segue away from your playing career and just talk to me a little bit about you as a coach, your perspective when you're talking to parents and players that are a part of your program and you're trying to educate them on, if you have a kid who has an opportunity to play college basketball at whatever level, but let's say you're trying to educate a kid about why the Division III level is such a great opportunity for a lot of kids. And I think there's such a, people are so misguided about it's Division I or bust because you see all this stuff on social media and everybody has this vision in their head of what they think is what they want to do. And yet, as you said multiple times, I think one of the things that we've tried to do on the podcast here is just impress upon people that hey, have you ever gone and watched a Division III basketball game and seen how good the players are in those games? I think most people, whether it's players in high school or parents of high school players, they're not always aware of how high level Division III basketball is. So just maybe talk about a little bit about your role in trying to work with your players or help your high school players to understand what their college opportunities might or might not be.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt that everyone wants to be a Division I athlete, and there's people out there that feel like they are, and it's hard. Division III, phenomenal basketball players. Division I, phenomenal athletes, athletic basketball players. I got a chance. I was a GA at Cleveland State, so I got a chance to be around the Division I game for a while too, and that was my first experience with Division I basketball. And we're talking Cleveland State, where it's a mid-major, and it's Cleveland State at the time, and that's a different level of basketball. Different athlete. Those guys are crazy athletic, and they don't come. There's not Division I athletes. Excuse me. There's not Division I basketball players at every school. It's just not. That's just not the way it is.
All right, so let's go back to how the opportunity comes to get to Cleveland State. Talk to us about when coaching got on your radar. Was it something you were thinking about because of your experience growing up watching your dad? Was it something that you didn't think about at all until after your playing career was finished? When did coaching get on your horizon?
So I don't know what it was, but I always at college, you're up late and you're you don't get much sleep. You're up late, getting up early for class. But I would watch basketball all night. I would watch college basketball. They had Super Tuesday, Big Monday, all that back then on ESPN, which they still do. So we had games till midnight, and I would watch those. And Quinn Snyder was the coach of Missouri back at that time, and I thought he did such a good job with them on putting them on the map. They had one of the Rush kids back then, and they were just so good. And I watched him and how he handled himself and talked to his players, and I'm like, man, that's so cool. I would like to do that. So Coach Burson at Muskingum, we talked to him, and I was like, well, how do we do this? How do you become a college coach? And he was able to call some coaches and hook me and another player, Greg Turson, up with working camps. So we worked some camps in the summer. I worked Clemson camp, Tennessee Tech, Michigan State. Those were unbelievable opportunities. And at that point, I knew, all right, people are doing this. There's ways to get in there. You got to, obviously network and work hard and do the dirty work, trying to get in and see what you can do. And those experiences in the summers were phenomenal. Learning from those coaches, going to coaches' clinics where they would hold those at night for the volunteers, and got to go to Coach Izzo's house. He treated us all the guest workers, to dinner, and just that kind of stuff, and meeting those people and seeing the intricacies of coaching and how it really works behind the scenes, really got me intrigued and wanting to, have basketball as part of what I was doing.
When you were a kid, did you go to any of those overnight basketball camps when you were a kid as a player?
I went to Hiram a couple times, but
okay.
I didn't go to many individual camps. We went to some team camps.
Gotcha. So I always thought when I was a kid, I went to Ohio State's camp when Gary Williams was there, and I went when Randy Ayers was the coach. And when I was maybe a sophomore in college, I got an opportunity to go back down and work at the camp. And I had no idea, after hours,
it's crazy.
what these coaches, what that looked like. I had no idea. As a kid, you have no idea that lights out at 9:30 or 10 o'clock, and then coaches are A, going out, and then B, just kind of hanging out in rooms or doing whatever, and just talking basketball and diagram and stuff. And I had no idea that world even existed until I was, again, 19 or 20, and I went and worked at Ohio State's camp and kind of got that behind the scenes look. And I think that's one of the things, you talking about going to work at camps, and it's amazing how many coaches got their start by doing just that. Like, I've talked to so many people here on the pod where they've said, yeah, I was a sophomore in college and I was the video coordinator for wherever, or I was a senior in high school and I had, just finished playing and I was trying to get into coaching, and somebody told me, hey, just pack your car up and go work 14 weeks of camp in the summer, wherever you can work and network and get to know people. And I mean, it really is amazing the people that you can meet. And obviously even now today, the camp circuit is a lot different. There isn't those old school traditional individual camps. You have the elite camps and then you got the team stuff and whatever, but it's still, I think, a great way for any young coach to be able to, who wants to break into the business, to be able to meet people and make those connections, which then gives you an opportunity like you got at Cleveland State. So I didn't mean to interrupt, but go ahead and continue how you ended up working at Cleveland State.
Yeah.
And getting that opportunity.
I was looking for a graduate assistant job, after talking to some different coaches, and I went into Coach Garland's office at Cleveland State and had a great conversation with him. And he at that time they didn't have any openings, but he got my information, and obviously we would have seen what happened with that. But got my information, introduced me to some guys around, and the next day, or actually that I remember talking to him in his office. I actually walked past the secretary, just saying, just kind of like, hey, and I walked in, he was right there, and I just sat down. He's like, well, how'd you got to get in here? Her name's Coletta. So, so I went in, I was talking to him. He talked for me for about 45 minutes, hour. I mean, he was great. He was just awesome to talk to, and really, really open with me. And I remember him saying, man, are you sure you want to get into coaching? It's a stressful thing. And a couple days later, he was let go from Cleveland State. So Gary Waters took over, and I was like, hey, I got to go to his press conference. I got to try to get in. We'll see what they're doing. So I went to his press conference. Wore a tie, like I was trying to impress somebody. And I remember going up to Coach Waters. I caught him in the right outside of the where they were holding his press conference at. I was like, hey, Coach, congratulations. And he's, hey, I'm like, hey, I'm looking for a graduate assistant job if you don't have your staff filled. And he was like, come back and see me tomorrow, And he's smiling because there's other people around, and he doesn't want to be like, who is this? Who's
right,
this
exactly,
sucker
right. He's just trying to be nice, right? Yeah, exactly. That's fun. That's funny.
Yeah, so I come back the next morning. He's got the suit and tie on, and I come into the office and I say, hey, Gary Waters wanted me to come in here and talk to him today. So Coletta, at the time, she went back, and Larry DeSempler comes up, and that's one of his assistant coaches for. They were together for. I think
they were at Kent together. Yep.
Kent and Rutgers and Cleveland State, and he. So he comes out, and he's just. Larry's just the nicest guy in the world. He's such a friendly guy. He's one of my mentors, and I love that guy. I can't say enough good things about him. Still talk to him on a regular basis. He's just, he means a lot to me and what I've been able to, accomplish as a coach, and I owe a lot of it to him. And why I say that is for this reason: is he comes out and. Hey, I'm like, hey, Coach Waters wanted to talk to me. He's like, no, he's in a meeting right now. But I'm like, he's like, so what are you in here for? And I start talking. I'm looking for a GA spot. He's like, well, we probably got a guy that we might be keeping from Cleveland State that is currently the GA, but we don't know. We might have a guy from Rutgers that wants to come, or so we have there's some different options. He said, just give me a call next Wednesday. And I said, all right, should I call you at what time do you want me to call you? He's like, call me at 9. So I called him at 9 o'clock on next Wednesday. Nothing. He didn't know, I don't know anything yet. Give me a call next week. This went on for a good 2 months. And keep calling him, keep bugging him. And finally, everything falls through. Nobody wanted it. Or, for whatever reason, I get an interview. And, next day I'm hired on, and that was the coolest experience of my life. I was very, very ecstatic to get that. I felt, I felt like I was in a place that was making me happy, and I was learning. I learned so much. I remember thinking, like, out of college, I could coach high school, or I can even coach college.
Right.
And heck no, I couldn't do any of that. You know, you got to learn. You can't. You got to be around people that know how to do it and want to help you if you want to do it successfully. And you know.
What was the most surprising?
Yeah,
what was the most surprising thing to you? This is a question I like to ask people: is, you know, a lot of times you get done as a player, or you have an idea of what it means to be a college coach or a high school coach, and then you actually do it, and you're like, oh man, I had no idea that coaches had to do so much of this. What do you remember about something that was surprising when you first got there? You're like, man, I had no idea that they spent so much time on this.
Oh man, well. The film, there's no question about film. I was a video coordinator. It was part of my graduate assistantship. I spent hours upon hours upon hours. They flew somebody out from California to train me on the software. The film exchange, the organization of game tape and breakdown of film, it was awesome. You might have
to explain that to young guys who just think you can just hop on Huddle and cut everything up digitally.
Oh, yeah. We're talking different. Sports code where you're live coding games and breaking it down, and coaches watching it at halftime just to see tendencies, or just, hey, let's see just defense right now. Let's just see our defensive possessions. Let's just see our offensive possessions. Let's see our missed shots. And that's at halftime of a game. You know, you're playing Butler and you got a tight game, and they want to see that. So things like that. And the time off there was none. That was my life, and I loved it. I didn't make any money. I made $250 every 2 weeks, and my classes paid for. But the knowledge and the experience and understanding really what a Division I player and team looked like was awesome. We had some really good players.
Who was your favorite player, the one you developed the best relationship during the time while you were coaching there? You have one guy that sticks out?
We had a few, and I think relationship-wise, Janathan Bullock and Cedric Jackson, those guys were, top-notch guys, and they were always, Norris Cole too. I mean, Norris was unbelievable. Norris was the hardest worker I've ever seen. First one, literally, he had one offer from Walsh. He was committed to Walsh, Norris, and Jason G came in and wanted him out of Dunbar, and he was able to offer him. That was his only Division I scholarship, and he came in. He was a little scrawny but athletic and worked his tail off. And so we talk work your tail off. What does that mean? All right, he's up at 5 getting shots up. He's lifting relentlessly. He's the last one to leave the gym. He's doing everything that and above what you need. And he was fortunate enough to make it as far as he did, as he has.
Absolutely. Were you getting to do some stuff on the floor in that role, or no?
Yeah, I was able to. Now, it wasn't much. It was more working with drills and setting screens and making passes and, helping out in that aspect. But it wasn't much coaching, helping out the coaches as much as I could. But, I knew what my role was, and it was getting the film, making sure the coaches were organized, and practices were set, and we were set up for those.
Yeah, there's a lot. I mean, I think when you look at what a Division I staff looks like, and again, every year I think it probably grows and gets bigger. You look at the number of people that are on a bench today compared to what it was like back 20 or 30 years ago, and the number of coaches continues to grow at every level. You just think about how specialized things have become, especially when you talk about the Division I level and the knowledge that coaches bring to the table. How long was Coach G there with you? Because I got to know him because his son Brian was in my class as a 5th grade teacher back when Brian was in 5th grade, and his older son played for us, I think, for 2 years at Richmond. Brandon, before they left, and he ended up finishing up at Cornerstone, which is where Brian ended up going. But Coach G was a great guy. I always liked him, and he and I always had a good relationship. Just again, like I said, because I was his kid's teacher in 5th grade. So,
right. Yeah, he was there. I was there the first 3 years, and he was there all 3 years as well. I think he was there maybe 7 or 8 total, and then he went to Longwood. I think he's at Cincinnati right now.
Hey coaches, parents, and group leaders. I want to introduce you to our newest sponsor, SnapRaise. SnapRaise is the nation's largest digital donation platform built to help teams, youth groups, and clubs raise money quickly and efficiently without selling products. SnapRaise builds your group a customizable campaign website, and students use their mobile devices to connect and engage with their biggest fans. My son's high school team used SnapRaise this season, and our team raised all the money they needed to fund their season, and then some. Getting SnapRaise started is quick and free. Just visit snapraise.com and you'll get connected to a local SnapRaise expert in no time. So you're going through, and obviously at that point, while you're going through this, are you still thinking you want to be a college coach? And does that at some point shift? Because obviously now you're on the high school level. So how does it progress from you being in the office and hunting down Gary Waters to be able to get the job to you're there for 3 years and now you get done? What happens when you finish that causes you to go the high school route? Was it something that circumstance just made it happen? Was it a change in kind of the way you looked at things after having been in it for 3 years? What was your mindset like at that point?
Wow. Well, so I'm 26 at the time. This is my third year, and I start thinking at the beginning of the year, all right, what's going to happen in 4 months when this is done? I wanted to stay in college, there's no doubt, but I also had a mindset where I wanted to start making money. I felt like 26, I was old or getting old.
Yeah.
Which, if you're listening and you're 26, you're not old. You have plenty of time to do what you want to do. But I wanted to make some money, and I applied at a couple schools. I was going to go out to Loyola for an interview, but they ended up hiring somebody before I got a chance to interview. And I was actually offered a job at Dartmouth from Coach Waters. Knew the head coach there really well. He had come in and kind of was mentored with Coach Waters and was looking for a third assistant coach. And I got a chance to talk to him and would have had the opportunity to take the job, which at the time paid $19,000, and it's in Maine, I believe. So it paid $19,000, and I would have had to teach, or there was a lot of in and outs to deal with it. And at the time, I didn't know if that's exactly what I wanted to do. I didn't want to continue to be broke, but I knew basketball was something that, there was no doubt basketball was going to be one of my avenues, and try to keep that as part of what I was doing. So I would have taken that if I didn't go the high school route. What happened with high school was I had applied to a few schools that were open, had some openings, and I actually got a call from Claymont High School down in Uhrichsville, and they were looking for a head coach. So I went down that day. I was working out at Cleveland State, and when I got a call to come work out, I had never been there, never heard of it. I just asked the distance, how far it was, and I got an opportunity to go interview down there. And I remember coming back up and talking to Coach a couple days later. I was offered the job, and I came back up to talk to Coach Waters, and I'm trying to figure out if this is what I want to do. Did I just spend my last 3 years busting my tail doing all this crazy stuff?
All right.
To not take the next step as a college coach or in the college ranks, or do I want to do this? Do I want to just stick with high school? And high school was always intriguing to me too, because first of all, of my high school experience, and second of all, I always liked working with kids. I like teaching, and teaching was something. I had my master's in education. Teaching was something that I was passionate about, so that was something that made sense to me. And I remember going back up to Coach Waters and saying, "Hey, Coach, what do you think about this? What do you think about this?" And he said that being at Claymont would be a great decision to be an actual head coach, and that wouldn't close the door to getting back into college at all. But he said, one thing I do remember him saying, and I'll never forget this because I didn't really understand what he was talking about at the time. But he said, the worst thing about coaching high school is going to be the parents. And I had no clue what he was talking about.
Right. Oh, yeah. Well, as a graduate assistant there, I'm sure you were completely isolated from if there was any conversations between coaches and parents, you probably were not privy to most of those discussions if there were any.
No. Yeah, and it was more, in college, you got who you wanted, and if they didn't like it, they can go somewhere else. Everyone was talented, and but at the end of the day, those guys are making, that's their living, They're not in it. It's a lot more intense. At the end of the day, that's their livelihood. So
yeah, no question about that. So when you go to a place that you've never been, you go from being a graduate assistant, kind of taking orders and doing things from, for the rest of the coaching staff. And now suddenly you're thrust into a position where no longer are you doing someone else's tasks. You are now the decision maker. So what's that like, both from a standpoint of going to an area of the state where you haven't been, you're not really familiar with it, and then two, transitioning from somebody who's an assistant coach to somebody who is now the head coach and has to run a program? What did that look like? What did it feel like when you started, maybe before you started?
Oh man, well, it felt great, and I was so excited. It was so much different, obviously, being in the leadership role, and I remember I was trying to imitate or act as much as I could as the coaches at Cleveland State. I would talk like them, use their language. Obviously, basketball-wise, everything I did was based off of them because that's what I knew for sure. 3 years.
Absolutely.
That was it. And it was a lot. I learned a lot. There was so much to go off of. But I think the biggest thing that I learned that first year was, first of all, making sure that you're treating the people that you're working with, that are working with you, the right way. I think that is absolutely huge. If you want people to, work as hard as you do and care as much as you do, you got to show them that you care about them. I think as a leader, communication with your staff. I learned, obviously being a head coach at that young age, communicating with your staff and delegating things was very important. I found out that I couldn't do it all by myself.
Right.
But I definitely had there was a lot of learning to do as far as not so much basketball itself, but just the, all the little things about high school basketball that are different, as far as scheduling buses and team dinners and things of that sort that we didn't really have to deal with at Cleveland State, but then also trying to get the video equipment that we could for Claymont so we could still do the video that we were doing at Cleveland State. So right. There was a lot of stuff that I was trying to get used to, but the basketball thing was the easiest thing to do. It was all the things outside of basketball that were a little bit tougher.
All right, so first question related to your staff is, how do you put together a staff as a young coach in an area that you're not familiar with? How do you do that? And then two, you talked about being able to treat those people, being able to treat them well. So what does that look like in terms of then trying to build relationships with your staff? And you can frame that through what you did at Claymont all the way up through what you did at Avon and what you're doing at Strongsville, just in terms of how you try to build that relationship with your staff and give them empower them and delegate things to them so that they feel invested in what it is that you're trying to build as a head coach.
Yeah, I remember my first year, that was the first thing that I had to do was interview people. And so that's the first thing I did. I was like, hey, we got to get this out, get this posted within whoever can apply. And I met with a lot of people and just, asked them the questions that needed to be asked, and kind of read them on what their intentions were and how they could fit with me and what I wanted to do and what I wanted to implement. And basketball was really important, I think, at that time for knowledge, but I really was looking for people that I felt like I could trust and wanted to just work. And, being able to just have conversations with and take criticism and understand that we're all in it for the same purpose, that's huge. And I feel like, my staff understands that I care about them. We talk on a regular basis. We would talk and have, weekly meetings and hangouts just to make sure that we're all on the same page with things. But I try, even at Claymont, starting at a young age, I would lose my mind on my assistant coaches a couple times. Not lose my mind, but I would, I'd get on them and, but I learned from that. There's a time and a place and a way to talk to people. And I think by not doing that, sometimes you learn and you realize how important that is. And I think that, even building a program in and of itself, building relationships is how it's going to be done. You got to be able to trust people, and they have to be able to trust you, regardless. On the floor, at practices, if there's no trust within the staff, that's going to be
that's a disaster. That's a disaster, as you well know, and anybody who's coached anywhere, and if you've ever had a situation where you don't have trust within the coaching staff, that goes south. That goes south really, really quickly. When you think back to that first experience, what's something that you feel like you were pretty good at right away out of the gate as a high school coach? Something that when you came in, you said, I feel comfortable with this piece of coaching. I feel like I'm pretty good at it. And something that was a strength and has continued to be a strength of yours as a coach.
I thought there were two things that I was good at. I thought the first thing was just relating to the players and just kind of having them see the leadership role that I was going to present. I think just, getting that rapport I was good at naturally. And on the floor, I think defensive schemes as far as man-to-man, I thought we were a good defensive team and we did a lot of really good things that I thought translated. But again, it changed, people adjust, teams adjust. But, my first year, I thought that defense was something that we were pretty consistent with and, won us games and kept us in games and, translated from the college game.
All right, so let's ask the reverse question. What's something that you feel like you were not very good at the beginning of your career that you've improved upon over the course of your time as a head coach?
I knew that was coming, of course. There's no question. How much time you got, man? From my first year, this is my 12th year as a head coach, and I feel like I've, learned and made adjustments as a man and as a coach. And I know early on, offensive schemes was not something I was really great at. Teaching the fundamentals of the little things as far as setting screens and boxing out properly was something that I wasn't good at. I thought everyone knew how to do that. You should know how to box out. You should know how to set a screen. You should know how to come off tight off of the screen. But that's something that I learned. Hey, we've got to still work on that. That's a fundamental. You're going to win games with fundamentals. There's no question about that. Every player, regardless of how talented or gifted you are, if you are fundamentally sound, you're going to be 10 times better. So those types of things with players, player development was something that I felt like I've gotten better at and have seen the importance of, as the years have gone by.
All right, so how does the opportunity after 3 years at Claymont, how does the opportunity at Avon come across your desk? And talk about the decision-making process for leaving Claymont and coming back closer to home to Avon.
Yeah, so I had an unbelievable experience at Claymont. I was there for 3 years. I met my, at the time, fiance, and she's my wife now, down there. And I learned so much. I got to fail. I got to succeed. And I got to meet new people. I got to be around new people. I got my first 3 years of teaching in down there. I got to learn what it was like to be a part of a teaching team as well. But I knew I wasn't going to retire from there. I knew that was just not realistic. So I wanted to stay, but I always wanted to keep options open and see some available, possible locations to move. And I remember seeing that the Avon job was open on the OSHA website, and I remember thinking, wow, now that would be a really good job. And I had applied, talked to Larry DeSempler a little bit about it, and just got some advice from him, and I ended up getting an interview. And I remember at the interview, there's a whole team in there interviewing me, and it's going well. And we're talking about football because the football team's just getting off of their first state final appearance. And how are you gonna? How do you feel you can get this program, going in the right direction? And I'm like, oh, just like the football team. We're going to be working hard. And I mentioned the football team, just like, our head coach Elder. And, I mentioned all of that and did not know Coach Elder was in the room interviewing me too. So I gave him a shout out without even realizing that he was in the room. So that was good thing and a bad thing. But it got a chance to just show who I was. And it was a good conversation. And when I was very, very fortunate to get that job. And I've been very, very fortunate, all my life, especially with my teaching career and being at Claymont and then going to Avon for 8 years. Phenomenal place, phenomenal community. Had an awesome experience with basketball there. Had a couple conference championships. Really good kids, and I have nothing but love for Avon. I had a great, great experience there.
Talk about bringing in your high school coach, Coach Joe Lynch, to work with you at Avon and what that experience was like for you and for him.
That was awesome. So I had asked him the year after he had left Strongsville if he wanted to help out with me at Avon, and he wasn't too interested in getting into basketball or staying into basketball at the time, and went back to him a year later, and he was more intrigued, more interested, and kept on him, and he wanted to help out, and he was awesome. I mean, he was with us for 5 years. Very rarely missed a practice. Just I still have a picture of him up cutting down the nets in our last year or second to last year there, and it was just awesome to have him around and let him teach the guys our free throw break and some different things we were going to do. It was awesome just to see him happy. It was cool.
So what's it like from a relationship standpoint where the previous relationship is he's your coach, you're a player, then you go to this new relationship where you're now both adults and you've transitioned, but now you're the head coach and he's an assistant. Just what was it like navigating that? And obviously I know Joey's a great guy, and so clearly there's not going to be any issues there, but just talking about like what that was like from a perspective of the relationship between the two of you and how it how it changed and transformed over the course of that experience.
Oh yeah, I mean it went from, man, that is my coach. That guy gave me an awesome high school experience I loved and got me kind of kick-started in getting basketball as part of what I do. And then it went from there to, oh, he's not the coach. I got to get him on my staff. I love that guy. Let's go. So it went from that to, hey coach, you want to come on our staff? Yeah, let's do this. And it was, we never had any hiccups along the road. I mean, we got along great. He helped out so much, just his knowledge of the game and his perspective and his attitude, and the kids loved him, and just being around him just made everybody happy. And our relationship was great. It was so, like, having him over for our coaches meetings, and getting to experience that with him and seeing that different side of him where you don't, not necessarily the coaching, and player relationship is it's more of a friend. It's more of a colleague relationship 20 years after, or 15 years after you graduate. So it was awesome.
Did you ever get past calling him coach?
I
sort of.
I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't think to his face it was always coach. Maybe behind his back it was Joe.
There you go.
But it's definitely coach now when I see him.
Yeah, it's one of those things that I think it's funny as a 50-year-old. So this year I hadn't talked to, I had an assistant coach at Kent and then my head coach. I hadn't talked to either one of them probably for 20 years. And so now I'm a 50-year-old man, and this summer just got reconnected to both of them. Had an hour and a half phone call with each one of them. And it's amazing. Like, you go back and, you would think that by the time you get to be my age that you would have the relationship where you just call them, you call them like a colleague and you call them by their first name, but I couldn't. Both of them were just coach to me. Right. And I think it's just, you think about what those relationships are like for you as a player, and just, I guess, the reverence that I looked up to, every coach that I ever played for. I could never see calling them by their first name, despite the fact that, they might be 75 now and I'm 50. It's right. I still just couldn't bring myself. Couldn't bring myself to do it.
It just doesn't feel right.
No, it doesn't. And then the fact that you worked with them for 5 years, where obviously that's even more of a collegial relationship where you guys are, working side by side with one another, and still, you still really can't pull the trigger on calling him Joe. It's hilarious. Do you want to score more? Training with the Shoticle is the easiest way to score more. The game is changing, and data scientists are determining the best ways to score. Millions of computer simulations determine where to hit the backboard for the highest percentage shots and when it's best to use the backboard. The Shoticle provides those highest percentage shots. From beginners to next-level athletes, the Shoticle is helping players increase their shooting percentages. Visit Shoticle.com now and start scoring more. Talk to me a little bit about the decision to leave Avon, obviously get an opportunity to come home to Strongsville, but how difficult was it to have the conversation with the Avon community, the parents, the kids, your players? What did the end of your tenure at Avon look like? And we'll get to that before we go on to try to rebuild the Strongsville program.
Man, well, it was definitely tough. I wanted to, I loved Avon, and I could have, seen myself there and helping out the basketball program at any capacity for as long as I could, be there. But when Strongsville has always been something that's intriguing to me as far as basketball, and is just as far as life, because, when I decided to go down the high school basketball, path, to me, it was Strongsville was the public school. Where else would I want to be besides Strongsville? That was where I went. That we are, the Mustangs, and that's why would I not want to be there? That was the, pinnacle of public school basketball for me. I don't know. I had the connection there. I played there. There's only one school you can really say that about. So while you're coaching, to be able to do that, I just think it's just an unbelievable experience. And to be able to say that I'm coaching at the high school that I, got to play at and had an awesome experience at, I'm very blessed and I'm very humbled by it. And people might say, hey, you're just just you're high school basketball coach. And yeah, for sure. But I also always wanted to do this. I always wanted to be the head coach here. I always wanted to be a part of, our basketball program, whatever aspect of it. But it was something that, that's where I'm from. It's just a little different. It's just a little different. And it goes along with Coach Fitch over at Avon now. He was my JV coach at Avon for 8 years, and he had been coaching prior to that, but he's an Avon graduate, and it's different for him. It's just different,
Yeah, I think there's no doubt that when you have that personal connection to the school, that there's a benefit to that. And I don't know what it is, and I don't even know if you could articulate it. I know I can't articulate it, but I think that there's just this feel for, hey, I have just this extra 1% of pride or effort or determination because, I'm a part of this in multiple ways. I was a part of it as a student. I was a part of it as an athlete. I'm a part of it now as a coach. And so as a result of that, I think I can see where over time you would look at it and say, hey, that's the crown jewel of high school jobs, because not because somebody else thinks it is, but just because you think it is. So when you talk about this and you look at the program has been, I'm just going to use the word down for lack of a better way of saying it, a little bit over the last several years. So when you come in, what are some of the things that you learned at Claymont and at Avon in terms of building a program that when you came in, you felt like, if we're going to get this thing where it needs to go, here's some things that I've learned at my other stops that we're going to have to figure out and start to take care of right off the get-go. And obviously this year is a lot different because of COVID and just the situation of how much contact you can have with the players. And obviously the season's all goofy and you guys have been quarantined multiple times. But just in an ideal world, thinking about what do we have to do to turn this thing around? What were some things that you learned from your previous stops that are going to help you to get things going in the right direction at Strongsville?
Yeah. I mean, the first thing is we want to set a culture and expectation for our kids. We talk about discipline, unity, toughness, and passion as our 4 pillars in our program, and we want all those kids to understand what those mean and why we have those as our foundation. And we, as coaches, we preach it and we talk about our expectations of our program and our kids and our relentless effort. We want to be practicing, and working relentlessly in the off season. We want the kids to be having fun and enjoying themselves and working as a team together. So the biggest thing is, the culture aspect, getting our coaches to be visible, to know the kids by name, to be down at the middle school when we can. Right now for games, just to see them. We had some middle school workouts in the summer too. But I mean, the first thing we are trying to do is just to get our word out of what we're going to be about and what we're expecting out of Strongsville basketball players, and to be around as much as possible to meet the kids and to build those relationships. I'm huge on getting kids to trust, trying to build trust within kids, and keeping open communication so that they understand where they're standing and what their roles are. But that in and of itself is the first thing we are trying to do, is get the culture and the expectation of hard work built in and instilled within the program.
All right, that makes a ton of sense. When I think about and I hear about a coach talking about the pillars of their program, and obviously there's a lot of coaches that have a lot of different words, just like the ones that you used as part of the program. When you look at those and you start to say, okay, these are the things we're going to build our program on, how do you translate that for the players so that if discipline is one of the words, how does a kid know within the program what discipline looks like? In other words, how do you translate those pillars into behaviors that the kids can exhibit so that and they know that, hey, we're living up to this pillar of discipline, just as an example?
Yeah, I mean, discipline, we talk about discipline on and off the floor. So as far as on the floor, we preach the little things, as far as if we're not going to do things right, we're going to have to fix it immediately. We are going to do things right, or we are going to have to run. We're going to do things right so that our teammates are also being pushed and doing things right as well. We are not skipping the little steps to success. We don't we talk like we talk with confidence because we feel like we should, but we can't be all about talk. We have to be about discipline and doing the right things and the little things, running hard, getting to your spots. As far as off the floor, we talk about making good decisions, and it's hard right now. Obviously, where they have limited contact and we have limited contact, but we preach that as making good decisions. You got a good thing going. We are Strongsville basketball. you got that name on your chest. You got to be making good decisions. And we have had, people we've talked to. We have to, anytime something comes up, we always have to address that. And just making sure that, people got to realize if you want to be a Mustang basketball player, you're going to make good decisions. If you're not disciplined, you can't be a part of it. We're a cut sport. We have a lot of kids that want to be a part of it. We got to get the right ones in there.
All right, so you talked about building relationships, and to me, that's one of, I think, the most important things that as a high school coach that you have to do. And when you're talking about relationships, especially as the high school varsity coach, you mentioned going down and making yourself visible at the middle school games, making yourself visible in the program so that people begin to associate Coach Sapara with Strongsville basketball. And there becomes one of the things that I felt like has been missing here at Strongsville in the last, since Coach Lynch left, and I think Coach Collins tried to get it going a little bit, is just the fact that there hasn't been this desire for kids to look up to, like you mentioned, going to Cuyahoga Heights games with your dad and looking up and seeing that those kids were heroes. And I know when I went to Strongsville, when I was in second, third grade, and my dad would take me to games, and I couldn't wait. Like, I used to watch the warm-ups and just dream about one day being able to run out to the fight song and slap the backboard during the layup line. Like, that would have been the most thrilling thing. If you would have told me when I was in fourth grade that was what I was going to get to do someday, my life would have been complete at that point. And I think that desire, that aspiration to be a Mustang, I think is something that has been lacking. And so just talk a little bit about how you go about making yourself visible. And obviously this year with COVID, it's a lot different. So maybe talk about what you've tried to do under the circumstances and then what you're going to try to do once hopefully things get back to normal at some point.
Yeah, I mean, right now I'm getting to, along with our staff, we're getting to middle school games that we are available for as far as our schedule allows. Once we get back to normal, we're going to be working. We want to be working with middle school kids as much as high school kids. We want them to be involved with us as much as possible. We want the lingo to be the same. We want the kids to understand the expectations at an early age, so that we are all on the same page and they are, they know what, like I said, what is expected of them moving throughout the program. As far as the youth program, we want to make it to our youth Sunday games. They have a lot of games that are played. We've had coaches clinic up at the old rec center. It's the church over on Prospect. I forget what it's called. But
Pathways. There you go.
So yeah, we've had a coaches clinic, and we plan on doing a lot of things. We want to try to hold a youth tournament at Strongsville, and obviously it's tough with gym time and finding things for that. But we are, we're committed to trying to make this a great youth program where our kids are being developed and having a lot of fun. And we want to play games in Strongsville. Unfortunately, this year we weren't able to do so. But I also think that's important for our kids to be able to play in their facilities. And just I see a big benefit in that as well. But holding camps for the kids throughout the summer, and middle school kids going to camps with us and having their workouts on a regular basis as well. The weight room is a non-negotiable. Starting in the summer, off season. I mean, these guys are going to be lifting, no questions. I mean, that's a non-negotiable. And there's going to be opportunities for basketball on a regular basis for these guys in the off season, besides in dead periods. And we expect them to be grinding, whether they're multi-sport athletes or if they're just playing basketball. We're going to give them as many opportunities as we're allowed to give for them to develop into, solid Mustang basketball players.
All right, so let's do a public service announcement for the parents of kids who are part of any program, not just Strongsville's program, but talk a little bit about just the amount of time as a high school varsity basketball coach that you put in during the 4 calendar seasons of the year. Just talk about some of the things that people who are out there maybe don't see publicly some of the things that you do that you have to do if you want to be a success? Because one of the things that I've always said is you look at the baseline amount of time that it takes to be able to compete as a high school basketball program and convert, and subsequently as a high school basketball coach. I think you go back 25 years and the amount of time that was required to build a good program was less than what it is now. So just talk a little bit about the time that you put in outside of what the public can see with just practices and games. What are some of the other things that you're doing that the average person may not realize?
In season, Mike?
Yeah, let's start in season, then we can go off season after that.
Yeah, I mean, in season, it's a lot of meetings with coaches, a lot of meetings with players. Film is nonstop. We break down our own film on a daily basis. Not only our film and statting our film, but preparing for the opposition. One thing that's huge as a coach is you got to have a wife that's understanding, because she really doesn't like me very much from November through March. I'm not joking either. So you got to have that understanding. But I mean, it's a lot of time. Like I said, we'll have a practice till 4:45. Get a lift, and then we're headed to a middle school game, and then I get home at 7, watch some film. And then next day we get up, obviously have a day of work. We go to practice, watch some film as a team, go through practice. And then like today, we met with all our kids individually, just to make sure, talk about roles, make sure everyone understands their roles and expectations, so we're all on the same page, because we don't obviously want to make sure that they understand their roles and what's expected of them. They're high school kids. We want to be on the same page with them. We don't want them frustrated. And the best way to do that is just communicate with them. So, we had one-on-ones with them today, with the coaching staff, and just little things like that. Sending in some stats and talking to people about players on the phone, sending emails, replying to emails, dealing with basketball and practice schedules. And right now it's just crazy trying to find games. There's a long email list, a chain email list where there's, hey, we lost the game Tuesday. Does anybody want to play? We lost the freshman game Friday. Does anybody want to play? And, it's just a lot of that throughout the day. And obviously planning your practice accordingly, making sure that you're preparing your guys not only to improve on our team building and team skills overall, but preparing for the next opponent as well. So I mean, there's a lot to it, and that's why you can't do it by yourself, and that goes back to trusting your staff and having a good support system that helps you out.
Yeah, no doubt. What does your practice planning process looks like? So when you finish a day's practice and you're going into the next practice, or it's the day after a game, and you're trying to figure out what does the next day's practice look like, when do you do that? Are you doing that sitting during the school day during a planning period? Are you doing that late at night after everybody goes to bed at your house? When are you doing the practice planning?
So we talk after practice about, all right, so what do we want to do tomorrow? So we'll take some notes, and we'll make sure we get that into a practice plan. The practice plan is usually made the day of practice at lunch, and consult with Coach Eicher as well, because he's up there, and we talk to make sure we're on the same page. We always want to warm up and make sure we're competing with everything that we're doing, so we try to keep them going up and down early just to get loose and competing for sprints. So we get into that, and then we work on the basics and fundamentals. We want to do defensively and kind of work our way into offensive schemes and sets that we want to improve on as well.
Do you have a favorite drill or a favorite, I don't know what you call it, concept skill that you want to make sure that you hit on every single practice? Is there a go-to drill that you do some variation of every practice, or do you like to keep it all varied up depending on what the needs are of the kids and your team on a particular day?
Well, there's a shooting drill, continuous shooting, that I really enjoy doing, and that's something I've pretty much done, I would say 80% of the practices since I've been a head coach. And it's just a 2-minute warm-up drill where you're competing against the clock. And I got it from Cleveland State with Coach Waters, and it's you're sprinting the floor, you got to get a layup, and there's 2 skip passes where you're hitting the shot, and a layup's worth 1, and a jump shot, no matter where it's from, is worth 2, and you got to get 50 in a minute. And I just love competing against the clock. I just love it.
Yeah, being able to have competition built into your practices, I think, is key, especially with kids today. I think the more you can get them competing for, again, whatever it is, whether it's competing against the clock or competing against an opponent and scoring drills and stuff, I think a lot of coaches have gone to that. I don't know if it was as prevalent even 10 years ago as it is now in terms of, people charting stuff and keeping track of those things and trying to make their practices as competitive as possible. You talked a little bit about watching film. How much film, like during the season, if you have a game a week where you have 2 games, how much film are you watching on average during that week? And you can either give me, minutes and hours, or you can give me the number of games that you're watching of teams.
Yeah, I mean, we right now, since there's not the teams that we have played, they haven't played a lot of games yet, so we've been able to watch pretty much every game that our opposition has played. It varies, some like Coach Shep's done a great job. He loves watching film. He does a great job breaking it down as well, and Coach Eicher too. So we delegate it, and then we find, I'll look at some offensive stuff and see what we want to show, and Coach Shep will look at some defensive stuff and see what we want to show, and then we'll put some playlists together to show the kids. But we watch I would say every game so far. We had a game last night and started watching Brunswick for Friday. We're already on that, obviously. So seen a few of their games already and getting ready for them.
What are the main things that you look for when you're sitting down to watch a film? What are the main things that you're trying to pull out? And then so you pull those out as a coach, how much of the film that you've watched do you share with the kids? So when you sit down and watch film with the kids, how many minutes of film are you sharing with your kids? Obviously, you're watching a much greater volume than what you end up showing to your players. So just talk about how you break that down. So
for instance, today we watched some clips from our game last night, and we had 22 clips. I don't know, probably about 10 seconds per clip. But again, you break it down and you talk about it. And that was from one game, but for your opposition, you find a few times that they ran the same set. All their baseline out of bounds plays, all their sideline out of bounds plays, called blobs and slobs. So we go through all of those. If they have different press breaker or different presses, different press breaker, just try to separate that in the film. And so you want to talk about their scheme, obviously, and then we want to definitely hit personnel. I think high school personnel is huge. Just understanding tendencies of your opposition is important. You definitely want to try to be prepared with what they have on a personnel side of things heading into a game as well. So we try to break that down as well. That's more talking about personnel and showing film about schemes and tendencies.
Got it. Makes sense. All right. We are coming up. We just passed an hour and 15 minutes. So I want to wrap it up by asking you one final question that I've kind of used to wrap up a lot of episodes recently, and it's a 2-parter. So the first part is, when you look ahead to the next year, the next 5 years, but when you look ahead, what's the biggest challenge that you see on the horizon? And then number 2, what's the biggest joy that you have when you get up in the morning and you go in and you get to be the head varsity basketball coach at Strongsville High School? What's the biggest joy that you get from that?
Well, I think the most difficult thing that I'm kind of feeling and that I'm sensing that we're going to be facing is just changing the overall. Goes back to just the culture and the way we view our basketball program. It's obviously, things are different than when you played and when I played. Things are different, things are going to be different in 20 years from now as well. But getting people to expect, success and to expect to compete and to not, just to have the winning culture and the belief that we're gonna win, and we're gonna, we are a winning team. We are champions. We will be champions. We're gonna fight. That's who we are. I think that's something that isn't as prevalent as it has been in the past, and we're trying to get that back. Just to go off of that real quick, I know we're wrapping this up, but we've lost 19 games in a row to Brunswick. That's a lot of games, and that's
a lot of games.
That's an old school rivalry, man. I mean, that's what high school basketball should be all about. And 19 games in a row, that's a lot. And I feel like we want to try to be back. We want to try to be a team to be reckoned with, and have that belief that we are as good as anyone.
Absolutely. All right, your
my biggest joy is, man, I get to wake up every day, and I get to go into the high school and teach and do what I always wanted to do. And our situation is what it is right now with school and with the world. But at the end of the day, I still get to work with kids, and I get to coach basketball at Strongsville with kids that were just like me and just like you, and share the love of the game that I have with them, and hopefully rub off on them, and have them have an awesome experience like I did in high school. So that's awesome.
Doesn't get any better than that. That's awesome. Great answer. I couldn't agree with you more. Before we get out, I want to give you a chance to let people know who are listening to the podcast how they can get in touch with you, how they can follow you, how they can learn more about your program at Strongsville, and then I'll jump back in and wrap things up.
Yeah, sure. You can follow me at Coach Sapara on Twitter, and that's the best way to get a hold of me. You want my email too, Mike? Yeah,
sure.
K
Why not?
Sapara, Sapara at scsmustangs.org. Yeah, any questions, anything pertaining to basketball or follow-up questions, sure.
Awesome. Kevin, I cannot thank you enough for spending almost an hour and a half with us tonight. Really appreciate your time. Again, I'm excited to see what you're going to be able to do with a program that is not only near and dear to your heart, but also to mine. I'm invested in it on a number of levels, not just as an alum, but also, as I've said to our audience, my son is going to hopefully get a chance to play for Kevin at some point, so I'm excited for that to happen. And again, to everyone out there, we appreciate you tuning in and listening, and we will catch you on our next episode. Thanks.
Thanks for listening to the Hoop Heads podcast, presented by Head Start Basketball.